much, Dr. Kamara. I think I sent 2 abstracts, and so that was why you had a mix up with the title. So my name is Stephen Arthur. I'm in Ghana. I work with the Crop Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and I'm a PhD candidate with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana. And today I'm talking to you about part of the work I'm doing for my PhD on the growth and yield response of peanuts to pests and crop management packages in Ghana. And this is going to be the outline of my presentation. So the importance of peanut in Ghana cannot be overemphasized. And as we all know, it's good for food, and it's also used as animal feed. But it also plays significant role, cultural roles in Ghana. Talk about marriages, naming ceremonies, as well as festivals. And it makes it a very important crop in the country. On the agricultural fields, it's known for fixing atmospheric nitrogen and making it available to the next crop. And it's also known for helping with weed management strategies because it smoother weeds when the canopies are formed. It's also used in pest management strategies. Talk about the push and pull factor with the management of fall armyworm in Ghana and elsewhere. Peanut is produced by peasants in Ghana, and basically it's done with people who have just smaller land sizes, and their yields are almost 76% lower than the minimum potential yield of 2.5 tons per hectare. And this shortfall is actually attributed to a lot of things, including poor seeds, the varieties that are not tolerant to diseases and pests, poor soil nutrition, poor planting timing, inappropriate weed management, as well as poor disease management. And so because of this, a lot of research has gone on and recommendations have been given on individual problems. However, these results that have been had have not been put into packages to see how they will fed, and because of that, the adoption of packages has not been successful. And one of the reasons for which it's not been successful is because farmers have not really had a demonstration on how these will benefit them long-term in terms of how it's going to help with the improvement in their yields, improvement in management of weeds, improvement in the management of other pests as well. And so we believe that when we put these systems together, the individual recommendations are going to have a complementary effect, and by so doing, it improve the productivity of the granite. And so the objective of this part of the work is to ascertain the benefits of the pest and crop management packages on the peanut growth, the reactions that pests will have, as well as yield enhancements, which will also help with adoption of agricultural technologies and recommendations. And so to do this, 3 locations were selected, and the work was done in Crop Research Institute in Kumasi, which is within the middle belt of the country, looking at the map on my left. And then it was also done in Tamale, which is in the northern part of the country, and in Wa. Both Wa and Tamale are Savannah Agricultural Research Institute stations. So with this work, it was a factorial experiment which was laid in randomized complete block with 3 replications, and the plots measured 5 meters by 5 meters. And 2 factors were looked at. The first factor was the peanut variety, and we looked at the one local variety which is called Chinese, and then an improved variety called Yenyawso. And then 3 levels of the input systems were also looked at. That is the high input, moderate input system, as well as the low input system. And these are the things that went into selecting the systems. And so as you have in this table, for seed and planting, we have good seeds as well as timely planting for the low input, and then it runs through for the moderate and high inputs. And then a build-up of that is the weed management strategy. And as a lot of farmers would do, they do just one-time hand weeding. For the moderate inputs, we decided to go for 2 times manual weeding, and then for the high input, we decided to apply a pre-emergence herbicide pendimethalin, and then a follow-up manual weeding. For disease management, for low input, there was no disease control. For the moderate input, there was the application, 3 times application of a local soap known as alaka-samina, and then the high input dealt with 2 times application of azoxystrobin and difenoconazole. With the soil nutrients application, for the low inputs, there was no application. For the moderate inputs, we had an application of NPK, and then for the high inputs, there was NPK application and then a follow-up application of calcium. And so these are the inputs that were put in and at the various times that they were done. The data that were collected included data that measured the growth and yield. We also took data on the cost and time involved in applying every one of those inputs. And the data were subjected to analysis of variance using the Statistics 9 computer software package. And then the means were separated by the standard error of differences at 5%. The count data were transformed using the square root transformation before analysis to make them fit the assumptions for analysis of variance. Now for the results, what we see here is that there were significant interactions between the input systems and the varieties in on weed populations and growth in all the locations. And when the data was pooled over locations and varieties, this was the result. And so to the graph on my left, for weed density at 3 weeks after planting, which is in the red, you can see that for the high input system where the pre-emergence herbicide was applied, weed populations were low as compared to the moderate and low inputs when no pre-emergence herbicide was done. However, at harvest, the weed density for the high inputs and the moderate inputs there were no significant differences between them, but there were significant differences between the high inputs and the low input. With the weed growth, when the data was pooled over the locations, it was seen that for both varieties, the weed growth at harvest were similar, but these were quite better than that of the low inputs. And when the data was put over the varieties and locations, it was seen that the weed growth in the low inputs and the high inputs were better than that of the low inputs. Now to talk about the leaf spot disease and severity, as well as the peanut growth. For leaf spot disease at 12 weeks after planting, the incidence was quite similar for the low input and moderate input for both varieties, but it was significantly lower in the improved variety and the local variety for the high input. A similar thing can be said for the severity, except for the fact that for each input system, when the varieties are compared, you will see here that the improved variety always had a lower leaf spot severity than the local variety, but that was lower when the high input was applied. Similarly, for the plant height, at 11 weeks after planting, there were no significant differences between the varieties and the input for all the input systems, except for the high input and the local variety, which had taller plants. And then with the canopy, the high input plots produced significantly thicker canopies than when you compare them with their corresponding varieties in the low or moderate input systems. And this picture shows one of the high input plots on the top and the moderate input plot for the Chinese variety, which is the local variety, which received the local soap application down, which was quite better than when no treatment for diseases was done. Now, for the effect of the systems on the variety, the effect of the systems and variety on peanut yield, it can be seen here that when the data was pulled over the locations, again, the high input plots resulted in better yields than when compared with the low inputs or the moderate inputs. And always the improved variety produced better yields than the local variety. A similar thing can be said for the kernel yield and for the haulm, which is the amount of biomass produced by the plants per plant. The high inputs also produce better haulm than the others, and this may be attributed to the fact that diseases were controlled and the plants received good nutrition and they grew very well. Now, for when the data was pulled over varieties and location, it could be seen here that for the pod yield, the high input plots gave better yields than the moderate, which also gave significantly better yields than the low input. And that could also be similar for the kernel yields as well. So in conclusion, what we are saying is that there were significant interactions between the input systems and the varieties for the weeds and diseases, as well as for the peanut growth and yield. And greater growth and yield responses were achieved with the inputs, the high inputs and moderate inputs, especially comparing that of the local variety where the high inputs were applied than where the low inputs were applied. And so we are saying that it's best to have packages so that we can see, improved yields. Also, the financial value and time spent for implementing each of these input systems, data were collected on such things, and these will be analyzed to ascertain the financial benefits that we will get from each of these input systems. With that, I will say thank you to USAID and the Peanut Innovation Lab, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and my supervisors. Thank you, and enjoy virtually some of the dishes made with granite in Ghana.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We have time for questions. I'll start off the question, Stephen, and that is, in my work in other parts of the world, we've also found that adding inputs for disease and weed control are very, very important for maximizing yield. But the main problems that come in addition to financial are accessibility, the ability for the growers to have access to the herbicides or the fungicides or products like that. Are they available to your growers in Ghana? And what is the plan to move forward as far as training the growers on how best to adopt these practices to maximize yield and profit?
Thank you for the question. And so the first part of the question, these inputs are available. They were sourced locally, and I'm also involved in other projects that deals with training farmers on the appropriate use of pesticides and other things. And so we work hand in hand with some agrochemical companies, and these things are available. Now, coming to the other part of the question, this is part of the project to upscale the results that we are receiving in this, and to have demonstrations done with farmers, dealing with the financial benefits that they will get and the other benefits. And we think that doing that will help them adapt these strategies.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions from the audience? As there are none, Stephen, thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks for participating in the APRES meeting this year and the JOSUG competition.
Thanks so much, Dr. Karai.